Hi, everyone. Welcome to the MAAP Community Call. It's Deborah Hamilton of Hamilton, ADR, North Carolina, and of course, this wonderful MAAP community. I'm so glad to see you all. I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late. I was helping a client whose dog bit someone, and it's part of this whole, make a plan for your pet kind of discussion, because if you have a disaster that occurs with your pet, I did a video many years ago that told everyone that when something occurs, either your neighbor's dog barks and wakes you up, or your dog is barking incessantly, don't go at that moment when the dog is barking and you're angry to talk to your neighbor. Never good. And being reactive and defensive, never good. Always really good to take a deep breath, wait a few minutes until you're a little calm, and then ask your neighbor or the person whose dog bit you or the person who was bitten by your dog to go for a coffee. It is sometimes seems counterintuitive to have a conversation, but if you can be the person who just listens for understanding and not become defensive, it diffuses these kinds of situations in such an incredible way that you won't get sued. They won't hire an attorney. But if you wait too long to address an issue, it's almost been a month now, so I'm a little fearful that she only called me on Monday, and that was the 10th of July, and she received the letter on the 27th of June. And people get really angry. I don't know how all of you feel, but people get really angry if they mail something the 27th of June and nobody's answered them as of the 10th of July. And then they start building that story. Well, she's not going to pay my medical bills. Well, she thinks her dog and this vicious dog is out there biting people and blah, blah, blah. So when you have a pet, you have responsibilities for that pet. For as long as you have that pet, you have responsibilities. And you really need to, in my humble opinion, address issues that arise with your pet immediately, no matter how hard that is. I know that Roxy tends to be a little argumentative at times, and she can get herself into a whole bag full of trouble if allowed. And if she did get into trouble, I know I would, and I know Sally would address it immediately, because it diffuses the situation so completely. If you just say, what happened, what went on, let me know, and let's check in to see what occurred. In this case, it was a big high-rise building, and the dog bit someone going into the building as the dog and its owner were coming out of the building. And of course, so now we have that, I'm sure she kicked it. Well, did you see her kick it? No, I didn't see her kick it, but my dog has never bitten anyone, and I'm sure she had to be kicked in order to bite. And I'm like, well, we can pull the films from the high rise, see if you can tell what happened. However, do you want this to diminish or do you want it to escalate? So here we are talking about making a plan for your pet, appointing caregivers, addressing the needs of your pet, and publishing it. Well, if you have a dog that tends, and we know Susan isn't here yet, and hopefully she'll come soon, but we know that dogs sometimes can be nippy. And if they've never nipped before, then this is a first. Roxy never disliked white dogs until she turned about 8, and then she hates them with a fiery passion. So you never know what is going to occur. You never know if your dog smells something on someone. Jan and I did a wonderful Why Do Pets Matter recording, and it's about the sense of smell. And we don't know what they smell on people, and they can react to it. So instead of what we do, because we want to protect our dogs, get defensive, it's always better to appreciate how the other person feels and then get more information. So that's what I'm trying. And the difficult piece about this is my client is an attorney. So right there, we have to make sure we're right. And we have to make sure we tell them all the reasons why everything they said was wrong. And I said, well, do we know that everything she said was wrong? Well, no, but I'm sure they're wrong because this has never happened before. And I go, I get it. And I want to tell her she's completely wrong too. And that's our immediate knee-jerk reaction, is to tell people, they're 1,000,000% wrong. Try to hold yourself back. So everyone listening to this, if you're in a discussion with a neighbor about a barking dog, with someone who allegedly is bitten by your dog, or if you're bitten by a dog, recognize that if you're the person who's bitten, the dog owner is going to be incredibly defensive. Give them a minute. They will take responsibility if you allow for a conversation. If you're the one with the dog, of course, they're going to blame you and your dog for everything from, the great earthquake to prohibition to you name it. But just let them reel, because they're frightened, they're scared, they've been bitten or they've had an issue, and let them go. And then hope that you can pull them back in, pay their reasonable medical bills if in fact something happened, because trust me, you don't want to go to court. I had a dog, and Sally, you might remember this. She was staying with me for a while because we were finishing her, and she allegedly bit somebody who came to change the battery in my burglar alarm. She allegedly bit him in the butt, and I couldn't see what happened. He said she bit him. And I said, well, she's never done that before, and I'm really sorry. And please send me any bills for, clothes with holes, medical bills, days of work loss, whatever. But he sued us for $250,000. And so we were like, okay. And then in his pleadings, he said that I sicked the dog on him. So my insurance company said, we're going to have to defend this because, you allegedly outwardly set the dog on him. And I said, you couldn't set an Irish setter on someone to bite them on a dare. I said, but okay. So we, of course, I think he got $2,500. So all of us spent about $5,000 in attorney fees for him to recover $2,500. And let me tell you, I would have gleefully given him $2,500 for it to go away. So these are the kind of things that even sometimes, if you are not argumentative, can happen as well, depending on who the other person is. But if you can diffuse it, it's always better to do that. So sorry to start this way, but the reason I'm late is because I was trying to be very tactful and diplomatic about thinking what you wanted this outcome to be, as opposed to being right. Do you want to get it right? So that's my big thing. And then I'm going to check in with everybody because it has been a crazy day. I posted something on Facebook today, and yes, Rose, I remembered. I told Rose, you have to remind me. I want to talk about crating your dogs, because I know that a lot of people have various opinions about crating their dogs. However, I can tell you that with all the workmen here, and sometimes with deliveries being made, and even though it's hotter than the hammers of what in North Carolina, I put fans on my dogs, I put wet rags in the crates, and I leave them in the car with, all my, because we're dog show people, we have 100 million things to shade the car, plus big fans, and it's easy at my house because I just plug them into the house. But I put them in their crates because I don't want anybody to inadvertently let them escape, especially with Mariah here, who may escape, and I don't know. And she'd be gone. So that's what we're going to check in with afterwards. But Connie, how's everything going out in California with the fires? I hear that the sequoias, they were using sprinkler systems. It was like they had little sprinkler systems at the base of every sequoia.
They do. And of course, the grove that was endangered, the fire grew to about a little over, I think it was 3,250 acres. And of course, this is in Yosemite National Park, the U.S. Forest Service, not the state of California. And there is quite a rivalry in the state of California between CAL FIRE, which is the state fire authority, and of course the U.S. Forest Service. And national forests account for about 55% of all the forest land in the state. So anyway, the U.S. Forest guys are the ones who are primarily leading the firefight, but of course they are joined by firefighters from all over the state. And they have an entire sprinkler system around this grove of 4,000 to 5,000 year old sequoias. These are national treasures. They really are. And of course, Yosemite is a magnificent park anyway, and a huge tourist attraction in the summer. So, of course, all the tourists are gone. And so far, the sprinkler system is holding. As of last night when I went to bed, the LA Times reported that the Sequoia Grove seemed to be out of immediate danger, but they still have the sprinklers going. And of course, the loss of wildlife is horrible. But it's basically due to the fact that neither the feds nor the state do proper maintenance of the forest to set preventive, prophylactic, if you will, backfires to clear all the dead brush and debris. And they think this was a human-caused fire, whether it was accidental or arson. They haven't investigated. They haven't had a chance to investigate yet. But in any event, it's always horrible. Fortunately, it's way north and east of me in the Sierras. So the kind of up toward Lake Tahoe is where Yosemite is. But, it's just a tragedy. And we have all been holding our breaths about the Sequoia Grove. And of course, here in Southern California, we're baking. It's supposed to be triple digit in the valleys. Pardon me?
It's dry heat.
That's the problem, is it's dry heat because it's like a tinderbox here. And it's supposed to reach into the triple digits in the valleys of Metro LA. And then out in the desert, where a lot of my Wheaton friends live with heat intolerant dogs.
Yeah.
And they all have treadmills to exercise their dogs in their garages. It is about 115 or 116. So it is horrific. And fortunately, I'm by the coast, so it isn't so bad. In fact, my AC hasn't even turned over yet today. And it's 3:45 p.m. Pacific time. So
wow, how great is that? Yeah, we have had air conditioning because we here on the East Coast are having humidity.
Oh yes,
yin yang. So dry heat is one thing, and yes, it creates a real tinderbox for fire. But humidity will absolutely kill heat intolerant people or dogs. And I am in the one group and my dogs are in the other group. So yeah. So I'm glad that the dogs are safe, that you're safe. And hopefully, since you don't have the heat index that your friends in the desert do, you'll be okay. Because I'm also thinking, wow, the electricity must be just off the charts.
It is, and fortunately, I have solar, so I'm in really good shape. But and a lot of my friends in the desert have solar, but their air conditioning systems are going out in this heat.
Yeah, they just can't keep up.
They can't keep up, and in fact, the central air systems in the desert have maybe about a third of the service life of those of us in town.
Yeah.
And they go out after about, anywhere between 5 and 10 years, where our ACs last for about 15 to 20 years.
Yep. Hey, Sally, how's everything in Connecticut? I know that you had a little bit cooler weather today. It looked like it was 76 in New York.
Yeah, it kind of looked like that, but with my long-haired redheads, it's really rough. There is supposedly we're 50% humidity. But Athena got up and vomited twice and wouldn't eat. And then we started to walk and she wanted to go and Roxy turned around and came home. And I'm like, okay. But things kind of leveled out. We stayed in the AC all day long and they've both eaten. So that's great. And no one has vomited in the last 4 hours. So that's a good thing. It's just, I've got a 12 and a 13-year-old, as you well know, and it's tough.
That heat on the old girls is really hard, including, us who are a little bit.
No. Oh, come on. No, not us. But
not us.
It's very, very rough. And the other dogs in the neighborhood also are having different problems. It's like crispy. I mean, I walk across the grass and it's crunching in Connecticut.
Yeah, we have the humidity, but it's not enough of the rain, because my grass is like that too. You would think in this humidity that the grass would be thriving, but it isn't. And you weren't here last week because you were away and you had a new caregiver and everything worked out. So remember the MAP plan, you have to appoint caregivers, and Sally appointed a caregiver before her trip who decided that she couldn't watch her dogs. And then she was scrambling for a caregiver, but I think it worked out okay.
Yeah, it was Lady Luck was with us, and we just felt totally blessed because it was a woman in her 30s. I've never really worked with her. She came with 2 great recommendations, and very fortunately, it worked out tremendously. And when Athena stopped eating, I was talking to her back and forth, and the next day she was eating again. So, and she adapted. I walk 2 dogs, she walks 1 dog at a time, but it was perfect. We just sort of like met a balance and it worked out. And so we were very, very blessed.
Yeah, well, that's really great. I have to say, I've also found someone in the neighborhood who's a vet nurse. And she isn't working as a vet nurse now because here in Eastern Carolina, there's not a lot of respect for vet nurses or vet technicians. They'd rather just hire somebody and call them a vet technician. So she's working as a boat insurance salesperson. So we've lost this wonderfully nurturing person. However, if she watches dogs, and as it turns out, her father's a family friend that we've known for 50 years. So it's interesting that, 6 degrees of separation. So when Jim and I go away this weekend, we're giving her 3 days and she's looking forward to it. And the kids are looking forward to it. And I'll fill you in next Wednesday because remember, I'm in a new place like a lot of you. So I'm claiming the same thing that a lot of my clients claim, which is I don't know anybody. I can't appoint anybody. I don't know anybody. Well, I don't know anybody here. So I'm going through it with you. So it is a frightening statistic. However, it is something you have to do. You have to really get out there, shake the trees. And that's what I'm doing. Hey, Jan, how's everything going with Tonka and you? Everything good?
Everything is good. Sorry I missed last week. I was on another podcast actually, so I was busy, but a few things that I wanted to thank the group for. So I actually had 2 conversations in the last, I think today actually, with people who have people that they know who've actually where their dog has bitten other bitten other people. So what Deborah was just speaking to was very pertinent. And then also just telling them they actually had to address the issue because it was only going to escalate. And they were kind of like, well, I just won't have them hang out around any people. And I was just like, that's really not a solution. So that was the first thing. And then because I modified my MAP plan, actually, because I realized that I didn't have anything on it about Tonka being extremely sensitive to fireworks. And my neighbor on the 3rd, I have a townhouse attached. My next door neighbor lit off firecrackers that were just like were fireworks. I mean, they were huge and it was horrible. I mean, my neighbors were freaking out because it's a fire hazard. And that was one issue, but I was freaking out because Tonka, no matter what I did, I mean, we were in a walk-in closet for 2 hours because it was the most closed-in space that was soundproof. And I thought, well, I really should modify my plan so that people know how sensitive he is. I mean, I don't think anything would have mattered because it was literally next door, about like maybe 10 feet from my backyard. So my house, so it wouldn't have mattered, but it was a good thing to
absolutely, you have to modify and you have to be aware because even if last year they weren't afraid of fireworks, this year they might. And I had last week, you weren't here, but I started by saying I had 2 of my neighbor dogs come to visit because fireworks were going off. The neighbor 2 or 3 doors down was doing those huge packs of firecrackers. So you have like 300 blasting off at once. My dogs picked up their heads, said, I'm annoyed, and then boom. But the dogs in the neighborhood were all coming to see me, and I was walking them home because I knew where they lived. And what you need to do, like you said, you have to put it in the plan so people know, but you really have to be proactive. On the 4th of July, you have to make sure all your gates are closed, maybe put them in an X pen or something, make sure all your doors are closed, because open the door, they're gone. And I mean, they are flaming gone. They are gone, 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 gone. And you're hopeful that they will be picked up by animal care and control. I was speaking to someone today about making a plan for their pet. And I said, veterinarians aren't required to scan for microchips. You think they are, but they're not. Only shelters are. So if your dog is picked up by some good Samaritan and it's a really great dog, of course it is, because it's your dog, it's a great dog. Well, I'm just going to keep this dog. And unless they bring it to a shelter where they will automatically be scanned, if they just bring it to a vet and, tell the vet a little story, the vet, and even if they told the vet, I found this dog, the vet might say, well, let me scan it for a microchip. If they say no, the vet's not allowed to scan it for the microchip. So quite frankly, you really need to let people know if your dog wasn't afraid last year, maybe afraid this year. If it was afraid this year, let them know. It's very important. So finally, Kieran, how's everything in Tenerife?
Quite mild. I think it's only about 80 Fahrenheit here. So
that's not bad. And there's a beautiful breeze, right? Hi, Junie. There's a beautiful breeze because you're by the water, or no?
Yes. Well, there's always a breeze here. With the Sahara Desert just 100 miles away, and the largest volcano in Europe, or largest European volcano. Sorry, the highest Spanish mountain, which is a volcano, is just behind us. So between the two, there's always a bit of a whirl, bit of a breeze. Yeah, but
even if it's hot.
Oh, it's always hot, always warm, always warm, always good.
Now, is it a dry heat or is it a moist heat?
Mostly dry.
Yeah,
nearly always dry. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're probably like Connie, that it's dry heat.
It's dry, but it's not severe.
Yeah,
it's not
115.
Exactly, it's not the desert type of dryness, so it's quite pleasant. Just a couple of points to pick up there, Debbie, on what you're saying with the letter and someone leaving it to the last minute. There's always a danger there that it's a sort of a classic case of justice delayed being justice denied, because when you're talking about the CCTV in the apartment block, that might have been erased after a couple of weeks.
Right.
But I think the one issue that could be quite important is when I had an interesting conversation, or I was at a conference many years ago with where a doctor was giving a presentation on dog bites. And this lady was an expert from South Africa, and she used to work in the trauma department. And she came to Ireland for the simple reason, I couldn't believe this when I heard it, that in the medical profession, if you work in a trauma unit in a country that's declared a war zone, you get extra credits, or you've less time to serve. And I thought it was the first time I ever heard of Northern Ireland having a useful attraction. But that's another story. But what she was saying anyway, when a dog bites, that sort of part of the dog's conversation, is it a warning, or is it a defense, or is it an attack?
Right.
And unfortunately, if something is left too late and natural healing sets in, well, you've lost that bit of forensic help as well. So
yep.
It's, so that's, what was the other?
Go ahead.
Oh yes, just on the power of attorney, I was just thinking about that earlier today, and it's a little bit like, on the MAAP plan, and it's a little bit like the power of attorney, where on the living will, if somebody isn't capable of making their own decisions at any point in their life. But I just realized today, I do some financial consulting, and I just noticed this year, everybody I asked if they had the power of attorney in place, not a single one so far. So I'm just sort of thinking that, maybe lawyers do bring it up to every client, or maybe not. But it's a very good case to have something about "and your dog, please" in the standard forms.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because I've started with divorce attorneys. So I've started with divorce attorneys asking, do you have kids? Do you have dogs? I said, because if you ask up front, you address it up front. If you wait until the end, it can sometimes blow up the best divorce agreement if at the end they realize, oh, but I just assumed I got the dog because I take care of the dog. Well, wait a minute. I bought the dog. I walk the dog. I'm taking the dog. And then everything goes haywire. So attorneys have been better after hearing me speak in asking that question early. And so it really is very important. But I would love to follow up now, because I think it's really important when you have the MAP plan, there's different point of views, right? So many people have different point of views. I've dealt with so many people who want different things for their pets. I just spoke with someone, hit her with the fire hose. I'm sure she'll be back. She might come to one of these meetings as well. But the bottom line is there's the gotta have, and then there's the like to have. So I drive my dogs in a crate everywhere they go. Yet, if they're with someone who doesn't have a car that accommodates a crate, will a harness do? Will a catch-all do? Will something do? If they're being well taken care of, crates are not, dispositive. Let's put it that way. However, it's really good for everyone to be able to always put your dog in a crate if they need to. So what I posted today was a post from someone who said there was a fire evacuation in California, and the only dogs that could stay with their owners in the shelter were those who were able to go into a crate quietly. And so that's a two-prong thing. So if your dog goes into a crate and barks incessantly, not good. And I've had dogs that go into crates and bark. I mean, most of the time they only bark in their crate if somebody's walking by, which in a shelter situation would be everyone walking by. So that wouldn't work. But then you might try putting a sheet. I don't know, Connie, you probably do this. I put a sheet over them so that they are, they can relax. There's not a lot of stuff going away. When they're puppies, they usually pull the sheet in and eat it. Or if they're dachshunds, they pull the sheet in and eat it, because that's what dachshunds do. They have these extendable noses, dachshunds, that they can actually reach things that are about 6 feet away from the crate and pull it in. But I find that every accident, God help us, that people have had who've gone to dog shows, everyone has survived. And the only time a dog is harmed is if the police don't know and they open the crate. And then the dog, because of all the stuff that's gone on, runs out of the crate. Now, I know that Connie does this. I'm pretty sure that if Jan drives with a crate in her car for Tonka, she probably has a leash hooked to the crate as well, because you never want to have to look for a leash when shit happens to your car. You want to make sure that that leash is right there, clipped to the crate for easy removal of the dog. Some people don't like driving with their dogs with collars in the car. And I'm not steadfast about whether or not a dog should be in a crate with a collar or not, or out running around to the backyard with friends with a collar or not. I err on the side that I want somebody to know where to return this dog forever and ever. So when my dogs are outside, they have collars on. And I was telling Jan earlier that I used to put just Hamilton in my telephone number. I would buy 6 collars, all different sizes, with just Hamilton and then my telephone number. And I did this because I didn't want anybody to know the dog's name, because then they would call the dog and then the dog would come. Because, of course, if you call Casey, he's going to come, right? And if you call Roxy, she's going to come. But if you call Hamilton, nobody's coming, because Hamilton isn't their name. And, maybe they'd come. So I broke my rule with Junie and Mariah because they both have their names on their collars. But I think when I order again, which I always have a shit ton of collars at my house for, friends who come with their dogs, you just slip it on and they're a Hamilton for a day. But I always do that to make sure that the dogs, they can find you. Do you know Mrs. Hamilton? Do you know a dog named Hamilton? Do you know anybody named Hamilton around here? Oh yeah, the neighbor down the street's name is Hamilton. Just a piece of information to think about. when you're getting a collar for your dog, yeah, we'd love to have everybody know it's, it's Tonka, or it's Roxy, or it's Athena, or it's Patsy. However, maybe not. So that's my thought for the day. And, whether or not the dog is to wear a crate, I'd love to check in with all of you. If you put your dogs in their crates, first of all, if they're crated. I know the old girls are not crated. And quite frankly, there was somebody who commented on my post who said, crating gets a bad name because some people put the dogs in the crate and leave them there all day. I have to raise my hand. When I was young and I went to work, my dog was in a crate in my apartment until noontime, when my mom went down and let her out for an hour, and she ran around, and then she went back in her crate. And then I got home at 6 or 7 at night, and I took her for a 40-minute walk around the blocks, because I lived in Queens. But yeah, she was in a crate a pretty long time. And she was none the worse for wear. She didn't know any different. She thought this was her life. Then she moved to Armonk and was running all the time and never saw the inside of a crate except in the truck. But they want to be with us. So if we're not there, if they're in their crate, they're fine. If they're in a room, like I'm going to leave to go away this weekend, so come burglarize my house, everyone. But anyway, the dogs will be here. But Junie will be in my bedroom because the caregiver may or may not stay overnight. And if she didn't, I told her, just put him in my bedroom and just leave him there. He'll be fine. Because I realize, and we don't pay attention to this, so I've just moved, right? I realized that Junie has never been alone in this house. He has been alone in the daytime when I go food shopping or something like that, but he's never been alone overnight. And I said, well, this will be a good test. Of course, Wild Woman of Borneo will be in a crate overnight. Once she leaves, she'll go in a crate. She'll be back in the morning. But love to hear what your thoughts are, A, on crates, B, on collars, either in crates or when they're running around, because I know there's a bunch of schools of thoughts. And there are a number of people who've had horrible incidents with dogs with collars. And I've, knock on wood, have never had it. So love to hear what your thoughts are. I'm going to start with you, Jan.
I'm a huge advocate of crates. Tonka's always has, I crated for a long time. He has no qualms about going in a crate. He would settle down if I was there and close by, for example, and I would feel better crating. Especially in a public setting, I would feel a lot better crating him. I wouldn't want to leave him uncrated. As far as collars in a crate, Tonka always has a collar on. Unless I'm switching collars for some reason, then, for a few minutes or whatever, but he always has. And he did get caught on the fence once, but I don't really even think it dawned on me not to collar him, because my previous dog was a digger and used to dig under my fence all the time. So, so I think that I always assumed that if he got out, I wanted people to know who he was. So I always had a collar on him. So I don't think I ever thought not to.
Yeah.
And actually, I think that it's kind of interesting because when Tonka's collar's off, he gets really anxious. It's almost like he feels like he's not dressed or something. It's really funny. Like he just feels, I could tell it kind of, he's like, where's my collar? Like, this is mine.
Didn't they have a Disney movie where if a dog got a collar, there was the whole stray pack. And then if a dog got a collar, they sort of were like, in their formal attire. Here they look, I've got a collar. So I think, especially with Tonka, was he a race dog or no? He was just a rescue dog.
He was just a rescue.
Yeah. So when they go into rescue, I think when they get a collar again, that movie is so realistic, because I think they do feel, I've got a collar again. That means I'm owned by someone, and owned in the best sense of the word for those people who don't like to talk about owned. Kieran, what do you think?
I suppose just to stick with your last theme of ownership, where if you have a crate in a house, start with I would always advise people, don't just bring the crate in and say, here's 4 walls and a roof, good dog, but build it up.
Yeah.
So start with the base and then build it up slowly. And dogs, I suppose, like humans, they just need routine. They love routine, and the crate basically represents their private room in the house, and it gives a lot of peace, a lot of stability. So if you like, if you have to bring the crate with you, if you're moving somewhere, at least you're bringing the
Home with them.
home. You're bringing the private room with you.
Yeah, that room goes everywhere, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, a lot of dogs like to get fed in their crate. I always tell people who are having babies that if they think, even if they think, because always they go, oh no, it'll be great. The dog will kiss the baby, blah, blah, blah. I go, listen, for the last 3 months, your last trimester, and I know how hard this is because you're going to be nesting and you're going to want to be hugging on the dog every minute. Put them in the crate at 3 times during the day for 20 minutes. Because dogs can't tell time. Thankfully, dogs cannot tell time, but you won't know when you need to get a minute of sleep or let the baby crawl on the floor and the dog steps on him, or maybe the dog doesn't like the kid, and that could happen too. If you crate them and give them their space and have it not be because the baby came home, but rather 3 months before the baby came home, this pattern started. It often makes it much easier for the dog to accept children. I used to give courses on that as well, because people would really not want to limit the dog's access to the child until the child arrived, and then they became germaphobes, which of course, anyone who's owned a dog or a cat, there is nothing to be germaphobed because you can't. It is everywhere. So yeah, I love that concept of their room goes with them wherever they go. They never move, and they have the best of padding, because I don't know about you guys, but I have enough padding for an entire shelter in my house, maybe the entire ASPCA, because I see a blanket, I see a pan, and I buy it because I love it. Colors, holidays, you name it, I've got a pad for it. So it's their personal home. Sally, I know that the girls don't ever go in crates with you because she has a beautiful old farmhouse. So it is an old farmhouse, and it's not conducive to having a big crate in the middle of the room. Although I think I did leave a crate for Buffy because she was such a pain in the ass. And her crate was small, but the girls always are in the car in a special way and very safely.
They're in the car in a special way, but I haven't told you, we do have 2 huge crates.
Good, yay!
We've always had them, and
they must be in the studio.
Yes, and I've got a blanket to put over them. Buffy was actually not housebroken, and so she had to go in the crate when we were
13 years old, but she was a hound, so I can tell you that it was a lost cause. But I digress. Go ahead.
But she came with an Irish setter, and I would put her in the crate when we'd go out. And the Irish setter would go and sit next to the crate as Buffy cried inside the crate. But the Irish setter would go right up next to the crate to keep her company. But talking about the collars that say Hamilton and the 3 people we appoint as caregivers, the way I got one of my caregivers, I was at the park and my dog was running, and I said, Dulcinea Hamilton, come here right now. And a man came up standing at attention. He goes, you sounded just like my mother. I'm so sorry. I go, I'm sorry, I'm Sally. He goes, I'm Hamilton. And ever since then, Hamilton has been one of the designated caregivers and a great dog lover. And so, Hamilton, that was a good name on the collar for our dog.
Yep. I tell you, you never know what's going to bring people close to you. Okay, Connie, wrap us up.
Well, my dogs all start with crate training when they're 6 weeks old, when they are still with their siblings here. All the pups, after they are weaned, of course, go in the puppy pen during the day, or a big X pen, or of course, if the weather is good, which it usually is when I have litters. I seem to always do March Madness at my house. The pups are outside quite a bit, and it helps with potty training. But at the age of 6 weeks is when they start with grooming on the grooming table, just a little brush and comb every day, and sponge down to get all the yuck off them. And at night, they go in their crates with a couple of their sibs. But I'll have, depending upon the size of the litter, I'll have 2 or 3 soft crates lined up in the family room. And then the adult dogs and I go sleep inside, and there will be, whining and weeping and wailing and gnashing of teeth for about maybe the first 30 minutes. And then they'll all settle down. And pretty soon the next night it is quiet. And they will sleep through until dawn's early light. And then, of course, one of them will start stirring. Mr. Casey was always my rooster. The others were always down for the count in his litter. But by the time they go to their forever homes, they're crate trained. And some of them have made the journey to their new homes all the way up to Northern California, to the San Francisco area. And they've, and the new moms will always tell me, oh, they were, perfect. We'd stop every hour to potty, but, they go right back in their crates and they would pass out in the back of the car, and they were angels. So mine are, crate trained from, very early on. And of course, the pick of the litter who stays with me turns into a show dog. And so crate training is absolutely a must. And before they ever go in the show ring at the age of 6 months, at the age of 5 months, I take them to a local show and bring a crate. And I will, put them with a friend's setup where I know they're safe, but I'll walk away. I'll watch them, but I'll walk away so that they get used to the fact that I'm going to leave them. And of course, in the car, crate training is absolutely mandatory. And of course, on the LA freeways, it can literally be a lifesaver. And with all the fire danger, if you've got to get out of your house in 5 minutes, the crates are there in the back of the car, ready to go. The dogs are in. So I was very happy to see your Facebook post about, dogs staying in shelters with their owners if they are crate trained. That is absolutely, literally a lifesaver.
And if you say, well, I've got a small car, if I put the crate in, I can't put all the human stuff in, fold it up, put them on your lap. Okay, I understand you have to bring all your paper documents, you have to bring some clothes, you have to bring, all the family heirlooms, fold it up, and then open it up when you get it. Doesn't mean they're not trained in a crate. And I have to tell you that I do the same thing with my puppies that you do. And I have to say the first 6 to 8 weeks are a drool fest as they're driving. And some of them get over it quicker than others. We use a lot of ginger in my house to try to make them feel better while they're in the car. But, it's funny because some people go, oh my God, I just love them sitting on my lap. And I like to show, I'm cruel, I like to show videos of what happens to a dog when the airbag hits it, even a big, 15, 20 pound Irish setter. It's not good. So you really do need to make sure that you keep them safe. So of course we're over time. It's 7:15. I'm so grateful you're here. Remember the MAAP plan, make a plan, address the needs of your pet, appoint caregivers, and publish. Tonight we talked about the benefits of crate training your dog. We talked about the fires. We talked about, whether or not to wear a collar and what to have on the collar. It is an important bit of information for everyone who is making a plan for their pet. Remember, Jan pointed out to us that you really need to tell people if your dog's afraid of something or gets sick. Like one of my dogs gets sick if you feed them turkey. Who knew? But they do. And I know that Sally and Gordon have made copious notes about what food the girls eat because they are pretty persnickety. And they do get sick if you don't feed them what it is you need to feed them. And I don't know if you can hear the wrestling that's going on behind me, but the 2 wild children of Borneo now, they ate already, so we're going to go downstairs. I love you all. Thank you for being here. This is such a wonderful community. I wouldn't miss it for the world. I'll see you next Wednesday. And until then, make sure you kiss Casey. Make sure you kiss Tonka. Kieran, I'm just going to kiss you. And of course, Athena and Roxy, kiss those 2 wild women of Borneo who are probably sound asleep in the air conditioning and not caring, but it's okay. I love you all. And until next week, this is Deborah Hamilton, ADR, North Carolina. And I look forward to hearing all of you and talking to you again next Wednesday. Bye for now.